Well, we have Paul Brennan in the capital Tripoli, but first let's go over to Hoda Abdel Hamid in Benghazi. It seemed very tense there for a while, about an hour or so. Hoda, are we any clearer as to what was going on?
Yes, we are. What happened is that some armed men in a car tried to actually reach this polling station. There was a light exchange of fire between them and the security forces at the top of the road. And now at the moment you have residents of Benghazi who are actually forming this human cordon on both sides of the road not to allow any kind of vehicles on the street. Now there have been two more attacks on two other polling stations, and in one of them they actually managed to get in, and from what we understand from the Electoral Commission, they actually took away some of the ballot papers and the ballot boxes that were there.
And there has been other disruption in other parts of the country, namely Jazeera and Brennan. What more do we know about those situations?
Well, the latest we have heard now is that 5 out of 20 polling stations in Jazeera have actually opened. What happened is that 2 days ago, the warehouse where all this electoral material was burnt down. They had to bring in some more ballot papers and boxes and ink from Tripoli. A helicopter took off yesterday to try to fly that all that material in there, and that was shot at as well, and an election worker was killed in that attack. So at the moment, only really 25% of the polling stations in Jazeera are open. The ones in Brennan are completely shut because they actually never managed to bring the ballot boxes and papers and ink to Brennan. That a convoy also came under attack on the road between Jazeera and Brennan. But we have to also underline that many more people are voting. The polling station behind me is still full, despite the fact that it was a target by these hardcore federalists.
Yes, I was going to come to the way people are perhaps excited, or at least looking forward to the possibility of voting, and also the lead up to the election. What has the atmosphere been like in terms of the campaigning?
Well, there's been very little campaigning. What you saw is shows of support by the people, calls by local leaders to tell people to go and vote. Campaigning per se, we haven't seen very much. This is a very first experience for absolutely everyone in this country, from the voters to the candidates to the parties themselves. And there have been, obviously, here in the East at least, some of these tensions and these security threats. What you had over the last 48 hours are two types of rallies throughout the city. Those who are calling for the elections to go on, those who are saying this is absolutely necessary to get rid of the NTC, which people complain about a lot, especially here in the East, and then the hardcore federalists, those who say it is a treason to join these elections. The makeup or the allocation of seats at the General National Congress is unfair. It's only 60 seats for the East, and for these hardcore federalists, that's not enough. That's another attempt by the West to keep the East marginalized as they see it. But the idea of federalism itself is an idea that appeals to a lot of Easterners. What they mean by federalism is really decentralization. They want to have their own ministries here. They want to have their own administrations on this part of the country, and they want to have their own say in the politics of the country. The hardcore federalists say we cannot trust anyone, and as long as we don't resolve this allocation of seats, well, then we shouldn't be part of any kind of elections.
Well, you'll be following those events and certainly the outcome and results of the voting as it happens in the coming days. Hoda Abdel Hamid in Benghazi, thank you. Let's also join Paul Brennan. He's in the capital, Tripoli. Paul, you've heard what experiences Hoda had just a short time ago. What's the atmosphere been like, certainly as the polls opened there in the capital?
Well, a stark contrast, the atmosphere here in Tripoli, and I have to say in Misrata too. I've heard reports from colleagues in Misrata. There's been no problems there. So the pockets of violent disruption that we've seen over there in Benghazi, and the patches of electoral disruption with polling stations not being able to open, That's certainly not been the experience here in the west of the country. The polls opened on time. There's been brisk business at the polling booths, and the people turned out early. Polling station we were at, people have been queuing since 6:30 in the morning to cast their ballot. A huge amount of enthusiasm and a huge sense of responsibility as well. The people were voting. I didn't ask them who they'd voted for, but they said they hoped that they had chosen wisely for the future of Libya. Well, joining me in this to talk about this is Ian Martin. He's the Special Representative of the United Nations Secretary General here. Ian, we are waiting for an update on facts and figures as to turnout in the early doors. But this trouble in Benghazi, does it worry you at all?
Certainly it's troubling. I think it's troubling first and foremost to the great majority of would-be voters in the east as well as in other parts of the country who clearly do want to cast their votes today. I'm afraid it's not altogether a surprise because those threats have been there. The leaders of those who'd been making their disaffection clear had assured us that they were not going to act violently today. And it's very regrettable if a small minority are trying to act against the will of the overwhelming majority of electors. But certainly I think the figures that the High National Election Committee are about to give will make clear that throughout the country as a whole, the great majority of polling centres opened on time and voting is proceeding normally. And that's a huge achievement, and I think the first thing one ought to say from the headquarters of the Commission here and from seeing polling centres as I've been doing this morning is it's been an extraordinary achievement to get such a well-organised election machinery operating throughout the country, and that's even included getting replacement ballot papers into Ajdabia between 3 a.m. on Thursday and 3 a.m. this morning to try to make sure that everybody has the right they've fought for.
And the experience of Benghazi, as you say, has not been shared across the whole country. There is enthusiasm, there is genuine optimism here for the success of these elections and for what they mean to a new Libya.
I think that's absolutely right, and one should distinguish between the very real feelings in the east of the country regarding their past marginalisation and their determination that they want an equal share in the future constitution making in this country, and the willingness of what I'm sure is only a very small minority to use violence to frustrate the democratic process.
Thank you, Ian Martin. We will hopefully speak to you later on in the day. Well, that's the progress report from here. In stark contrast to the situation in Benghazi, here at least, things are going actually rather smoothly.
Paul, while I still got you there as well, I mean, you heard, and as you mentioned,
yes,
this whole issue and debate about the East being marginalised, issues of federalism. People have had their concerns, certainly across the country, about the things that they really want. In terms of Tripoli, what have people been telling you about the issues that matter to them and how they'll be voting?
Oh, well, I mean, as far as the Tripoli people, they are, I suppose, cosmopolitan. I mean, if you go out to further west from Tripoli, you're talking about ethnic interests. The Amazigh people, they have language concerns, that they want their ethnic language to be recognised in the constitution. You also get that down in Sabah with the Tubu people. Here in Tripoli, though, you're more talking about proper government, and the people here, they want to see systems put in place, they want to see good education system, they want to see a good healthcare system. They're talking about the concerns that are shared in many capital cities up and down Europe and across Africa. You know, this is they're no different, frankly, than any other capital here.
Well, of course, you'll be following events for us as the voting proceeds throughout Saturday there in the capital. Thanks for joining us, Paul.